We do not have our live shout out of Kyiv any longer. It's been taken down. We understand that there's power issues in Kyiv as well as internet and phone issues out of the capital as well. Secretary Blinken said it was taking longer. However, U.S. intel on this has been spot on of everything the administration has gotten wrong about Ukraine. They got that right. John Bolton, former ambassador to the United Nations, former national security advisor with us now. One report that we even showed our intelligence to the Chinese to get them to tell the Kremlin to stop, and the Chinese ran to the Kremlin and gave them our intelligence. We saw that with President Biden not wanting to talk at all about the Chinese when asked about it at the press conference. Is there a new axis, much like Germany and Japan in the 1930s and 40s?
Well, I think there's developing what, to use an old French diplomatic term, I'd call an entente. I think it's less than an alliance and less than an axis now, but it's certainly a series of mutual understandings that are reinforcing one another. And so in this case, China's got Russia's back in Ukraine, and potentially reciprocally, Russia would have China's back on Taiwan. I think it could develop more. You know, if we put pressure, which, by the way, we have not done on Russia's energy exports, you could change that.
Do you understand that?
Customers. No, I don't. I think, look, I think the policy the Biden administration and the Europeans are following is a gradual escalation of sanctions. And, you know, they threatened sanctions if an invasion took place to create deterrence. Deterrence failed. Our policy failed. The Russians invaded. What are they waiting for? I think this is a signal to Putin of further weakness.
It's interesting because originally they said the sanctions were to deter Putin, and then President Biden said that no one thought it would work. Take a listen.
No one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening. It has to show. This is going to take time.
Do you understand, though, forget for a second whether it's the right policy or wrong policy. I've yet to hear the administration articulate why they think this policy can possibly work. Do you?
No, I heard that comment too, and I took it charitably to mean that the president had misspoken again. If he didn't think that these threatened sanctions would deter Russia, what was he doing? Everybody else thought that was the purpose, and it turned out they were insufficient. So if he's conceding right now that his policy wasn't intended to stop Russia, he's essentially saying he gave Putin a green light. The threat of the sanctions is punishment if somebody does something you don't want them to do. You don't punish just because you're unhappy. So I think it reflected, I'm just going to call it a slip of the presidential tongue. Other than that, it's a real logical breakdown.
You've been in the meetings with Vladimir Putin. You've gone eye to eye with him on a couple of times. The one thing that is turning against him, perhaps, that he did not expect is the public opinion worldwide. He's no longer seen as even a leader of Russia. He's seen as this pariah figure in the international community. So much so, Formula One canceling their Russian Grand Prix, Hall of Fame boxers saying that they're going to fight for Ukraine. The Washington Capitals' Alex Ovechkin, who's normally a Putin ally, said, I want this war to end. Delta Airlines suspending their partnership with the Russian airline Aeroflot. Is any of this public pressure, and then we've got the protests inside of Russia, going to make a difference to him?
I don't think it makes any difference to Putin. I think these are costs that he was willing to incur, which, to come back to the Biden comment, shows why he couldn't, if he thought that, then he was basically committing foreign policy malpractice, because all of these pressures might, if they had been sufficient, stop the invasion itself. That's what the president said. He didn't want Russia to invade. So what was he doing to stop it if he didn't think these sanctions were threatening enough to accomplish it? I simply cannot explain from any rational point of view what he must have been thinking.
It's perplexing. You said Vladimir Putin's baked in all of these costs, may have even baked in the cost of being delisted from SWIFT unless he has some backdoor deal with the Germans and the French to protect him from these really very, very thumbscrew sanctions. What, if you were advising President Biden today, is it there that he could do that would be something that Putin would not expect? Has not baked in?
I think if they if they really went around Europe and the United States and uncovered all the foreign assets held by Russian oligarchs, Russian leaders, Russian companies, and simply confiscated them, just took them and sold them, and used the proceeds to buy weapons for Ukraine, I don't think he would be expecting that. I think a lot of the sanctions he probably did expect, like asset freezes in the United States, and any Russian company that left any substantial assets in the United States deserves to have them taken. But a lot of these sanctions are also overrated. Take SWIFT. SWIFT doesn't actually transfer money. It's a messaging system. And you can be excluded from it, and it's clunkier without SWIFT. It's more time-consuming. It probably costs more money. But we did it to Iran, and by the way, even without European approval, and Iran and China are still buying and selling oil, cranking right along, even without SWIFT.
This is an interesting note from one of the smartest guys I have. If Ukraine goes into an insurgency fight, resupplied and staged out of Poland, that will give Putin a pretext to attack inside Poland. If the U.S. military answers the Article 5 call, whether Poland or Baltics, then Xi, the president of China, has an open shot to take at Taiwan because we can't put enough firepower in both places at once. Are we thinking far enough ahead on the chessboard here?
No, I don't think we are at all. And I don't think the administration has really thoroughly thought through what they're doing in Ukraine. So it's a very bad situation. I think that's why the NATO allies, the full-up NATO allies in Eastern Europe, like the Baltic republics, Poland, and others, are very worried by this Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's not directly affecting NATO allies, but if Poland wakes up tomorrow morning and finds Ukraine completely taken by the Russians, with Russian troops on their border to the south, as the Kaliningrad enclave of Russia is to the north, they're going to be very unhappy and very nervous.
Yeah, maybe one of the reasons the NATO Rapid Reaction Force was called up. Mr. Ambassador, it's good to see you as always, sir. Thank you very much. All right.
Glad to be with you.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.